Hiya, kiddies! It's time for your Middle Eastern news. Anyway, here we are again talking about the Turkey's purchase of the Russian S-400 missile defense system. And according to a Turkish defense official who said this on Monday, the United States has not yet taken up Turkey's suggestion of creating a joint working group to try to diffuse tension over Ankar's purchase of the Russian S-400 missile defense system. They're worried that the S-400 is not compatible with the new F-35 fighter jets. They're afraid. I guess they're afraid it's going to automatically target them or something. But Turkey has bought several F-35s, and they've been trained to use them, and they haven't had any issues. I think people in Washington should be smart enough to realize that the issue that they're trying to bring up is non-existent, in which case I know what this is really about. The missile system being a Russian missile system. Everyone's got to turn Russia into the big boogeyman these days, you know? Russia messed with my election! Russia caused an uprising of citizens in my country! Thanks to Russia, my sink doesn't have running water! Or something to that effect. Just the biggest boogeyman. When children go to bed at night, they check under their bed for Russia. I mean, come on, this is ridiculous. If Russia was really doing all the things people claim they're doing, they wouldn't have any time to actually run their own goddamn country. I mean, come on now, let's live in reality. But the two NATO allies have sparred publicly for months over Turkey's order of the S-400, which, as they claim, are not compatible with the transatlantic alliance's systems, although that doesn't appear to pan out. Washington says the S-400s pose a threat to the Lockheed Martin Corps F-35 fighters, and has warned of potential U.S. sanctions if Ankara presses on with the deal. Oh, sanctions, sanctions, and tariffs, sanctions, and tariffs. Don't you just love this administration's foreign policy? But Turkey is one of the core partners in the F-35 program, and a prospective buyer has said the S-400s will not impact the jets, and has proposed to Washington forming a joint working group to assess U.S. concerns, which they should agree to. They're assuring them that it's safe, and apparently it is, because their jets were unaffected and they're the same model. So, I mean, whatever. But speaking to reporters after an event in Ankara, Ismail Demir, head of the Turkish defense industry's directorate, said Turkey was ready to discuss Washington's concerns. If the source of the concerns is a technical worry stemming from the S-400 being located in Turkey, we have said repeatedly that we are ready to discuss this. However, the other side has not taken any steps to form the technical team and discuss this. Demir's comments come after U.S. Defense Secretary Patrick Shanahan last week sent a letter to his Turkish counterpart in which he outlined how Turkey would be pulled out of the F-35 program if it pressed on with the S-400 deal. Really? What are you doing, Patrick? This is not the kind of issue that you want to make this fight over. This is not where you make your stand. What are you doing? But Demir said the Defense Ministry and his directorate were working on sending a response soon. Turkish Defense Minister Hulusi Akar is likely to meet with Shanahan in Brussels on the sidelines of a NATO summit planned for June 26-27, a senior Turkish official said. Well, it's Juni in German, but we're not speaking German, we're speaking English! Then, of course, in response to this, U.S. offered the Patriot missile system, which is more expensive. The S-400 is cheap, affordable, it's modern, it was built within at least this century. The thing works, so Turkey doesn't really feel like they need to take the deal. I personally think our government's being very childish about this particular issue. Very childish indeed. But hey, it's not like they haven't acted a little childish from time to time. This is nothing new. Now, in other Middle Eastern news, Iran has accelerated enrichment of uranium. The IAEA says Iran has followed through on a threat to accelerate its production of enriched uranium, The head of the UN atomic watchdog said on Monday, departing from his usual guarded language, to say he was worried about increasing tension. Now, there were rumors that they were actually just going to use it for like a nuclear power reactor, but I guess that didn't really pan out, so I guess that wasn't true. I guess I was kind of hoping that our government was being a little more paranoid, but I was wrong. And you know what? I can admit that. I can admit that I was wrong. I can do that. I am an adult here. I am an adult. But the assessment comes at a time of sharply increased U.S.-Iranian confrontation. In recent weeks, a year after Washington abandoned an agreement between Iran and world powers to curb Tehran's nuclear program in exchange for the lifting of international financial sanctions. Washington tightened sanctions from the start of May, ordering all countries and companies to halt all imports of Iranian oil or be banished from the global financial system. It has also dispatched extra troops to the region to counter what it describes as Iranian threats. And again, I stress that no specific information on these threats have ever been given. No references to these threats can be found. And by the way, the Iranian nuclear program was dismantled in 2003. So, the lack of fine detail in this situation, I say I find it very suspicious. But anyway, Iran has responded with a threat to increase its enrichment of uranium, saying it is up to Europeans who still support the nuclear deal to save it by finding ways to ensure Tehran gets the economic benefits it was promised. IAEA chief Yukiya Amano, whose agency was responsible for monitoring Iranian compliance with the nuclear deal, said Iran was now producing more enriched uranium than before, but it was not clear when it might reach stockpile limits set in the pact. Excuse me. Let's see here. Yes, the production rate is increasing, is what he said, Yukiya Amano, as far as what he told a news conference when asked if enriched uranium production had accelerated since the agency's last quarterly report, which found Iran compliant with the nuclear deal as of May 20th. He declined to quantify the increase. Probably because he hasn't found any specific number yet. I imagine that it's increasing very quickly, which would make it very difficult for him to track and follow with any precision. Iran said last month it was still abiding by the deal, but would quadruple its production of enriched uranium, a move that could take it out of compliance if stockpiles rise too far. It demanded European countries do more to shield it from sanctions. Right, because the U.S. is really just kind of bullying the shit out of Iran. And Turkey. But on Monday, German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas became the most senior Western official to visit Iran since the new war of words erupted last month between Washington and Tehran. Alright. The situation in the region is highly explosive and extremely serious, Maas told a news conference alongside Iran's Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif. A dangerous escalation of existing tensions can also lead to military escalation. In his meeting with Maas, President Hassan Rouhani blamed the United States for the soaring tension and called on the European signatories of the deal to resist the economic war on Iran imposed by America. This war will never be beneficial for any country, and the Iranian people will resist these pressures and bullying behaviors, Iran state TV quoted Rouhani as saying. Zarif said Iran would cooperate with the European Union to save the deal. Reducing tension is only possible through stopping the economic war by America. Those who wage such wars cannot expect to remain safe. Maas called on Iran to avoid an escalation and stick to its commitments from the nuclear deal. Otherwise, Tehran would risk further isolation on the international stage and more instability in the region. Maas warned in an interview with ZDF television, broadcast shortly after his return to Berlin on Monday evening. Yeah, Iran, like, I know that we're kind of in the wrong, basically bullying Iran over this and being unnecessarily threatening. But really, them challenging the Iranian nuclear deal like this when everyone values it so much, I understand it's difficult, but especially with sanctions being placed against you. But this is only going to make things worse for Iran in the long run. They really do not want to do this. This is just going to make things worse in the long run. What they want to do is they want to avoid being the next Iraq. They want to avoid giving America an excuse to attack and invade. That's the last thing they want in this situation. Don't give them any excuses. But nonetheless, Amano said he was worried about increasing tensions over the nuclear issue. He added he hoped that ways could be found to reduce the current tensions through dialogue. It is essential that Iran fully implements its nuclear-related commitments under the deal. Washington's European allies opposed its decision last year to abandon the nuclear deal reached in 2015 between Iran and the United States, Germany, France, Britain, Russia, and China. They have promised to help Iran find other ways to trade, although with no success so far. All major European companies that had announced plans to invest in Iran have since called them off for fear of U.S. punishment. I love this country! Our foreign policy is just, it's a nightmare. Iran says the Europeans have not done enough to provide it with alternative ways to trade. We have not seen any serious measures taken by the Europeans in the past year, despite their fairly good political stance. Ma said there were limits to how much help the European countries would provide. We want to fulfill our obligations, Ma said during his new conference with Zarif. We cannot work miracles, but we will try to avert a failure of the nuclear deal. France, Britain, and Germany have set up a special purpose vehicle called Instex, designed to allow payments to Iran that would legally bypass sanctions that has yet to be launched. It is a new instrument and not straightforward to put into effect, Moss told reporters, adding, but all the formal requirements in place now, and so I'm assuming it will be ready to use it in the foreseeable future. Washington has denounced the European plans. Diplomats say the system is unlikely to have much impact on commercial business with Iran, but could be used for humanitarian transactions that are permitted under U.S. sanctions. Yeah, because they don't want their precious little sanctions violated. They don't like getting challenged when they act like a fucking bully over this shit. Anyway, to conclude this little article, Washington says the nuclear deal should be expanded to cover other issues, including Iran's missile program and its role in wars in the region. European countries argue that while they share those concerns, it would be harder to address them without the nuclear deal in place. Iran has ruled out any negotiation over its ballistic missile program and its activities in the Middle East, where Tehran has been involved in proxy wars with Saudi Arabia for decades. Wars in which we should never have been involved. We need to mind our own damn business and stop sanctioning and tariffing everyone into non-existence, and just focus on the stock market and getting our national GDP and financial growth into a more positive direction. We need to lower our military budget and focus on fixing our crumbling infrastructure and agricultural policies. But anyway, who's going to listen to me, right? I mean, I'm talking reason. People don't like reason, especially if they're politicians. Anyway.